Hey up again folks. Welcome back to this series looking at the map of Neck Endon district from the 1973 book Arfur Tow Crate in Staffordshire by Alan Povey and Andy Riddler. This will be the final episode in this series, and this time we'll be heading southeast from Neck End to have a look at what we can find on the map, explore the history of the area, and have a look at what it looks like today. If you haven't caught the series so far, why not start at the very beginning with episode 1? The link's in the description to all the previous episodes so you can catch up at your leisure. Right, let's jump in Yedfost and get going. We'll start as we mean to go on. In the pub, of course. Well, we'll duck in at the Waggon and Osses. The Waggon and Osses, note the extra G for that real oldie-worldy feeling, stood on Uttoxeter Road between Longton and Meir. There are unconfirmed rumours that during the war, future US President John F. Kennedy had a drink here whilst passing through Meir Aerodrome. Or it might have been his brother. Or it might have been the King's Arms instead. The details are a bit sketchy, but that rumour persists nonetheless. The pub was quite a lively venue right up until the early 90s, when the writing was on the wall, with the impending expansion of the A50 set to plough right through it. This was as good as confirmed when the pub became victim of an arson attack in 1994, which completely gutted it. These days, there's not much there to see, unless you like looking at whacking great dual carriageways, that is. And you might do, takes all sorts I suppose. But moving on. So continuing along what was Uttoxeter Road, we'll eventually come to Staff Spots. Staffordshire Potteries, and that's Staffordshire Potteries Limited, not to be confused with the general nickname for the area of North Staffordshire, had its factories located near to the A50 just outside of Meir. The company developed as a conglomerate of many smaller pottery firms that had struggled during the war years, taking them over in the late 1940s, along with their existing premises. The acquired companies were gradually moved from their existing premises to the now redundant hangars at Mere Aerodrome in the 1950s, and the site grew from there. The aerodrome itself occupied a large area just outside of Mere from the early 20th century right up until as late as the 1970s, and it was a hub for light aircraft, many of which could be seen lined up next to the main road on the grass verges. It operated both private and commercial flights within the UK, and worked in tandem with the Roots aircraft factory down the road in Blythe Bridge during the war years, forming a vital strategic partnership for the production and testing of aircraft. As the aerodrome declined with commercial flights eventually outgrowing it, Staff Spots acquired more and more of the buildings, eventually moving their entire production there in the 1960s. The company mainly manufactured utilitarian goods such as plain tableware, becoming one of the largest exporters of earthenware ceramics, although it did make other stuff too. At its height it was manufacturing some 750,000 mugs per week. It was eventually taken over by the interior decorating giant Kowner in the 1980s. I remember when it was Kowner and they used to have a massive car boot sale on the car park most weekends in the early 90s. Got me Sega Master System from there. Anyway, I digress. Kowner went under in the late 90s, but Staff Spots lived on, changing its name once again to Staffordshire Tableware until the turn of the millennium. The site stood derelict for a short time, but it was redeveloped in the early 2000s and became a massive B&Q superstore which is still there today, along with several other commercial units. The rest of the land that was once Meir Aerodrome now forms Meir Park Housing Estate. Moving further down Uttoxeter Road, we come to Ketchems Kowner. The unusually named Catchems Corner could refer to two things these days. It is a roundabout on the A50 near to Meir Park, and it's also a namesake pub. The pub was originally at the side of Uttoxeter Road before the A50 was significantly expanded in the 1990s. The name Catchems Corner was probably a reference to a toll booth back in the day when the road was turnpiked. At least this seems to be the case for other locations of this name in other areas of the UK. The pub is now somewhat isolated on the edge of a small housing estate tucked away just behind the A50, but it's still open, and it's now owned by Marsden's Brewery. If we keep going along Uttoxeter Road for a while, funnily enough we'll end up in Hutch Eater, or Uttoxeter, to give it its posh pronunciation. Uttoxeter's a small market town on the road to Derbyshire. Although the name appears to be Roman, a bit like Roxeter or Exeter, the current spelling's actually fairly modern, and the town's been named quite a few different things over the years. It appears in the Doomsday Book as, and I'm going to completely butcher this, Uttoxeter, it referring to it being a dwelling of someone called Wattock. So the name might be quite new, but there is evidence of a lot more ancient history in the area. Artefacts from the Bronze Age have been found nearby and are currently on display in the Potteries Museum in Hanley. There's also evidence of a Roman presence in the region. In more recent times, the town's more famous for its association with the literary giant Dr. Samuel Johnson, whose father, a well-respected bookseller, ran a bookstore on Uttoxeter Market. In later life, Johnson famously underwent an act of public penance, standing outside the site of his deceased father's store, exposed to the elements and jeers of the public due to the guilt he felt for not helping to run the family business while his father was dying many years earlier. This is now commemorated in a statue in the town centre. These days, Uttoxeter is most commonly associated with its racecourse, which is still active to this day. Before we head towards Uttoxeter, we could make a right turn and head up towards Mere-Ree. This is another typical Potteries abbreviation. Mere Heath, to give it its full name, is a semi-rural area between Mere and Rough Close. Its relatively high elevation, being situated on top of a hill, made it an ideal site for a windmill in the 19th century. And these days that windmill is still there, on the car park of its namesake pub. It's also the site of a tricky set of mini roundabouts that catch many drivers out due to the awkward spacing of the turnings. From said roundabouts, we could head back down Sandon Road towards Meir, and we'd come across Cinta Gustines. This Catholic church is found on Sandon Road, and is named after Saint Augustine, the 7th century missionary and first Archbishop of Canterbury. The current church was founded in 1934 and originally used a converted stable building until the current building was built in the 1950s. Its style is the typical Romanesque brickwork that was common in the period, and it's still an active church today. From here we could double back on ourselves again, and head out of Stoke-on-Trent towards Stoon. Stoun is a pretty little town between Stoke and Stafford, with a lovely town centre. Stoun itself has a lot of history. The name, though rather boring and literal in meaning, has a few interesting origin stories, ranging from it referring to an ancient megalith, a Roman milestone, or even a burial cairn for an Anglo-Saxon prince of Mercia. It isn't clear which, if any, is the true story, but they're interesting nonetheless. During the 18th century, Stoun nearly saw action in the Jacobite rebellion, as hasty defences were constructed outside the town, anticipating that the army of Bonnie Prince Charlie might attempt to head towards Stafford or link up with his allies in Wales. And, would you look at that, I made a video about that many moons ago. The link should be on your screen if you want to watch it. In the end, the army headed instead towards Leek in the Staffordshire moorlands, before retreating north, so the constructed defences never actually saw any action. Traditionally, the town's main industries were brewing, owing to the abundance of clear water nearby, and shoemaking. The town's also traditionally been a bit of a transport hub, with the River Trent running nearby, and being situated on a coaching route. At its height, some 30-odd coaches a day would pass through. The arrival of the Trent and Mersey Canal further increased the town's prosperity in the 18th century, with James Brindley being appointed as Grand Surveyor of the project in a meeting at the Crown Hotel in 1766. These days the canal still brings plenty of trade, although these days it's more in the leisure and tourism industry, and the canals are still a prominent feature of the town. Having visited Stoon, we'll double back on ourselves again and head back towards Stoke-on-Trent. The journey from Stoun back up towards Rough Close is a pleasant one. From Stoun we pass through a nice green valley, which was home to many watermills. And you'll never guess what, I made a video about that once upon a time as well. Feel free to give that one a watch too if it interests you. The link should be on your screen now, if not it's in the description. And as we arrive in Rough Close we'll come across another waitering hole, Jojan Dragon. I remember going in this pub quite a lot as a kid. I seem to remember it had a field behind with goats in it, and it was a smart sort of half-timbered building. Remember the football team used to let me pinch a few chips off the post-match snapping. But anyway, digressing again. Unfortunately it closed way back in 2009, and it was demolished in 2013. There isn't much to suggest there was ever a pub on the site now, apart from the name of the road that the new houses are built on, Dragon's Court. Finally, we'll come full circle, and we'll end up just past where episode 1 finished, in Latewood. Lightwood is found just outside Normacott, on the namesake main road that goes towards Mere-Ree, and it eventually merges with the A520 and heads towards Stoon. Today the area is a pretty nondescript, mainly residential area, but it does have a history. In the 1960s, a hoard of some 2,500 Roman coins was found in an earthenware jar, along with some other artefacts. It was discovered in somebody's garden just off Lightwood Road. They're now on display in the Potteries Museum and Art Gallery in Hanley. And that wraps it up for our final episode. Ta very much for watching, and if you're enjoying these videos, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. I hope you're also enjoying the rest of the channel's videos on the Potteries Dialect. Thanks once again, and I'll see thee soon.